Welcome back to my critique of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. In this video, I'll discuss the men in the film whose arcs involve not knowing where they belong. Warning, it's most of them. Gary Gruberson starts the film as the Ghostbusters driver and pseudo-leader. The engine is overheating and the electrical system is fried. Doesn't the driver bear responsibility for vehicle upkeep? Or does Gary need permission from Callie? But he's having so much fun, it doesn't matter that they're not getting paid to hunt this ghost. Before you object to that statement, I know. The exploitation comment Trevor makes is about the fact that the kids are unpaid labor in this family business, but it really does seem to apply to the Ghostbusters as a whole. Who is the client paying them to chase this sewer dragon ghost? It should be the city, but that's not the case. Does Winston just have them patrolling the city for ghosts? What kind of business model is that? But that's getting ahead of myself. I'll talk about that stuff later. I will use this short lull in my explanation to add another side note. Why does Phoebe know this ghost's name? Where did it come from? Or is it just exposition? Why does the audience need to know the name of a generic ghost? Anyway, back to Gary. In the mayor's office, Gary tries to defend Phoebe's participation as a Ghostbuster by saying she's better than the kids her age. Wait, no. He says more focused, more accomplished, and more capable than just about any adult he knows. Not comparing to kids, comparing to all of humanity. I would beg to differ when it comes to Phoebe, but I guess that's his opinion. Although, maybe he's not saying she's even remotely special, because
some of the smartest people I know are morons.
So I guess his bar isn't set very high. But Walter Peck bulldozes Gary's point with a simple question. What is Gary's relationship to Phoebe? In essence, why are you even speaking right now? Gary stammers a bit, and settles on calling himself her step-teacher, which in itself is idiotic. When did the teacher who blew off his summer school class so that he could perform science experiments become so stupid? But Peck follows up, stating that if he's not her father, that makes him her employer. But she can't be an employee, he sputters, because we don't pay her. This scene is so awkward that even Callie steps in to try to stop it. What happened to writing as a profession? Peck's question sets up Gary's main arc in this film. The movie wants to develop a father-daughter bond between the protagonist and her step-teacher, but this is woefully stupid. It's not the worst storyline to develop between Gary and Phoebe in a movie, per se, and it's actually one of the better written aspects of the film. It feels like the Jason Bateman parts of Juno, without, the disgusting subtext. But there's an important detail of this story that no one involved seems to acknowledge that makes this arc particularly terrible. Namely, it's been 3 years since the last film, in canon. 3 years! For this story arc to be viable means Callie is an even worse character than I mentioned in the last video, and Gary has the spine of a jellyfish after the Predator came hunting. It's been 3 years. They moved together from Oklahoma to New York City, but they haven't defined their relationship yet? He's just some guy Callie may or may not be dating. Really? Do modern writers think their characters just stare at the wall until the next plot point starts? And a bigger problem arises when we realize that Callie is clearly depending on Gary to keep her children under control. But he's definitely not their stepfather, future stepfather, or even surrogate father. He's just the awkward guy living with them who makes sex jokes about becoming a dog with their mom. And what's more, Gary seems chill with how things are, mostly because Paul Rudd is basically an unaging 80s surfer. Although, he does seem to realize what a terrible mother Callie is, and really wants to pick up her parental slack. But he doesn't know where he stands, so he doesn't think he should discipline the kids. Sorry, this is just pathetic. The arc continues to the next set of scenes, when Callie grants him permission to not just be their buddy, and he tries to show her that he can be formidable, which I don't think I have the proper words to describe what this is. Cringe doesn't quite cut it, and I hate that word anyway. Also, Callie seems to think that Gary should be taking on the role of their father automatically, but there is absolutely no chemistry between them. Watching the two of them interact, I'm not sure how the audience would think they're romantically involved. They do, however, struggle together to flip the switch on the containment unit, so maybe they do love each other. However, Gary continues wavering without a backbone. When Phoebe objects to being left behind on a Ghostbusters call, he stutters and fails to assert himself. Oh, and gets scolded for it by Callie. Imagine the woman who sent her son to deal with the literal monster in the attic alone, scolding you for not helping. Man, Callie sucks. As the movie progresses, we get several scenes where he still doesn't know how to talk to Phoebe, who desperately needs some parental guidance. He unplugs his proton pack to try to make her feel useful for fixing it, as a pretense to talk to her. But his encouraging speech is again derailed by his inability to define his relationship to the Spengler family, and is interrupted when they need to go ghost hunting again. It is only after Phoebe insults her mother after being arrested that he finally becomes a real father figure, telling Phoebe what she needs to hear, rather than what makes her feel good. And when challenged, she lashes out, questioning his connection to their family. Thankfully, he doesn't take it and gives her a piece of his mind. This is probably the best scene in the movie, which would only have been made better if he were harsher or had slapped Phoebe, who really deserves it. Ironically, this is the point in the film when I was most on Phoebe's side, but also most wanted to smack her. That'll have to wait for another video, though. Back at the fire station, Gary finds Callie packing and tries to convince her to fight for their livelihoods by reciting the lyrics to the Ghostbusters song, to the point of making the movie itself hate him. Again. He also tries to talk to Phoebe again, telling her that family doesn't have to just be blood relatives, it's people who remind you that you have a home. Which is a connection to Phoebe's character arc, but completely misplaced here, because Gary is not actually talking to anyone. He doesn't realize that she snuck out of the house, so she doesn't get the message, though it seems she heard it anyways by the end of the film. That is because it's a lesson she's supposed to learn, even if she isn't actually taught that lesson. Anyway, Gary tries to comfort Phoebe one last time after she releases Garaka, telling her that everyone he knows is a moron, so she shouldn't feel singled out for being a moron. She's not special, except perhaps in the Ralph Wiggum way.
I'm special!
He then tries to put his body in front of a proton beam to save Trevor's life, and he takes part in the power of love moment with Phoebe. So he's fulfilled the role of new father, I guess, which is solidified at the end when Phoebe accidentally calls him dad. He found his place, as the surrogate father to his maybe-girlfriend's daughter. Seriously? How do we end the movie still not knowing if Callie and Gary are even dating? There's absolutely no indication of it whatsoever in the film. It's crazy. Oh, and before I move on, there is one more thing to say about Gary. He seems to only want to be a dad to Phoebe. Other than trying to save Trevor from the proton beam, which was not much more than an innate protective instinct, he doesn't really interact with Trevor at all. This, of course, means he also neglects to help Trevor with his ghost hunt in the attic. I will point out, however, that the difference between Gary and Callie on this matter is that Trevor actually asks Callie repeatedly for help. He doesn't ask Gary, and, as far as I can tell, Gary remains unaware of any aspect of the problem for the entirety of the movie. So I guess there's that. Our second out-of-place man in this film is Ray Stantz. On the surface, he doesn't seem to have any problems with his life. He's still running his occult bookstore after 40 years, where he hosts well-attended events. He has a moderately popular podcast alongside Podcast, in which he finds and collects spirit-possessed objects for the Ghostbusters organization. He serves as a hub of information for the current Ghostbusters as they seek guidance about various supernatural issues. And he's one of like 5 people that know what Winston is doing with his covert Ghostbusters organization. He may have retired from actually chasing ghosts, but he's still in the loop, and it's not like he's hiring himself out for birthdays anymore. I don't see the problem. Except that the movie needs to motivate him to help Phoebe for some reason, so they give him a sense of longing for doing the things he still does? What? Let's get to it. Ray first appears in his shop, recording an episode of his YouTube podcast. An old woman brings him her deceased husband's wristwatch, which she says beeps whenever she enters the room. She thinks it might be possessed by him. Ray scans it with his PKE meter, and gets no reading, so Podcast smashes the watch with his sledgehammer. That's odd. People are bringing objects that have hefty sentimental value, to the point where they believe their loved ones are possessing them, to have them scanned during this Antiques Roadshow knockoff. There are only 2 outcomes. 1, the item is determined to be possessed, in which case Ray confiscates it to take to Winston's aquarium lab. Or 2, the item is not possessed, in which case he destroys it. Why would anyone go on this show? How is he not being sued for damages, or theft, or emotional distress? This old woman has no idea that Podcast is going to destroy her husband's watch, so she clearly didn't sign a release. Also, there's no indication of compensation for the lost items. What's more, all of the clients are standing in line watching this, and no one seems to care that no matter the outcome they lose their dead loved one's heirloom. As Podcast cleans up the mess of other people's shattered inheritances, Phoebe arrives to deliver a jar of mood slime. I know it's member berries, but what? Why would Vigo the Carpathian have left behind more slime? Why would any remaining slime be in Phoebe's hands and not Ray's or Winston's? And why would they be keeping the negative emotion slime? This slime is pink. The positively charged slime is green. Doesn't this risk reviving Vigo? Or, the Scoleri brothers? And why would anyone trust negatively charged, emotionally resonant slime to a girl who only has negative emotions? How has she not summoned dozens of hostile ghosts on her way over to Ray's shop? As she and Podcast take the slime down to the basement, Nadim enters the store to sell the Orb of Garaka to Ray. Nadim tries to entice Ray by telling him that his grandmother believed in superstitious stuff, which is perhaps the biggest understatement of this movie. She had been the sole line of defense against the ice-pocalypse. She possessed the magical prison of an ancient god. She had the god's horns on display in her house. She much more than believed in superstitious stuff. But whatever, she never told her kids about it, or trained them to take over the mantle, or made any kind of provisions to stop her idiot grandson from selling the orb to a group of irresponsible morons who will try their best from multiple angles to open it and end the world. So it's just some mumbo-jumbo she blathered on about while he was ignoring her and watching Power Rangers. Anyway, Ray plays into it, showing interest in the orb and testing it with his PKE meter. The orb's reaction to the PKE meter makes no sense. Why would a device detecting energy inside the orb become a catalyst to release that energy from the orb? It's like that latest Ant-Man movie, where the super microscope that was meant to map the quantum realm has its polarity reversed and somehow becomes a shrink ray / transport device. It was a friggin' microscope with maybe a camera or topography function. Why would it have the ability to send people into the quantum realm? But I shouldn't start talking about bad Marvel writing or we'll be here forever. Anyway, the PKE meter breaks over this power surge, so there goes another piece of original equipment that is lost forever after this film. Ray spouts some pseudoscientific nonsense and abruptly buys the box, without regard to price and without getting any contact information from Nadim, and then leaves the orb in the broken display cabinet until nighttime. Speaking of, it suddenly becomes nighttime during this part. The sun is shining pretty brightly in the attic where Trevor finds Slimer. Then the bell rings to signal the ghost hunt, and it's suddenly evening. Filmmakers are really bad about this, and it's quite annoying to me. Ray watches Ecto-1 race past his store and reminisces about old times. Seems a bit odd for him to now become melancholic about his old life when he told Phoebe in the last film.
Don't go chasing ghosts.
Ray shows up in Winston's lab for the unveiling of the new containment unit, which is based on, but clearly better than Egon's design. Ray seems to be there to grant approval for Winston's use of the patent, but we'll get to that in another video. The little back and forth between Gary and Ray is sort of cute. Camaraderie between the old and new groups can be nice if well executed, but the writers and thus the characters weren't smart enough to keep it up, so we get a dopey Gary face and a disapproving look from Callie before changing the subject. Later on, in Ray's midlife crisis center, Phoebe asks him if he's ever wondered what it's like to be a ghost. First of all, that would normally be grounds for a 48-hour psychiatric hold, and revocation of access to firearms, pending a hearing. But instead, Ray just responds that he wonders about it every day of his life. Before they can hurt themselves, Podcast interrupts, having discovered that the orb emits a chant in an ancient language, and they convince Ray to ask one of his contacts about it. For the purposes of his arc, he's only really convinced when Phoebe challenges the idea that he's retired. He doesn't like being called out as not a Ghostbuster. Since I already discussed Garaka's backstory in the first video, I'll move past it to the wax cylinder. Dr. Patton Oswalt lets them listen to the chant that unsealed Garaka in 1904. This prompts the possessor spirit, which has inhabited Podcast's equipment, to jump into the phonograph and spin the cylinder loose, throwing it into a trash bag and hopping the bag through the library to the exit. This whole sequence is ridiculous on its face, because the possessor spirit's power capacity is completely undefined and ever-changing, but we'll suspend some disbelief, because why not? Ray, by the way, is accosted by the library ghost on his way out. Really? Not only is this another needless callback, compounded by the appearance of the library manager and even going to the library in the first place, but it means that in all the time they were Ghostbusters, no one tried to trap the first ghost they ever encountered. They just left it in the library for 40 years? And the library staff never called them back, even after calling them initially? They just left the ghost alone in the library to chase people, stack books, and leave ectoplasm everywhere. And were the Ghostbusters banned from the public library for not trapping a ghost that they had no way to trap at the time? That doesn't make much sense. Anyway, the bag rushes outside onto the street and jumps onto the stone lion, so that the possessor spirit can take control of it. Why? You were largely home free. Why not jump onto the back of, say, a parked motorcycle, and take control of that, and drive away? Why choose the lion, which inevitably crushes the cylinder? Also, how does the cylinder get out of the bag while the bag is still tied shut? And not to put too fine a point on things, but why would a stone lion act like a lion just because it's possessed? It tries to eat Ray, not crush him. and it feels the pain of losing its tail and pounces toward Phoebe like a lion as well. Why? Whatever. Phoebe destroys the lion, and the consequences ensue. One aspect of these consequences is Winston shouting at Ray for endangering himself and the children. I'll discuss this in a future video, but seriously, what is wrong with Winston in this movie? He's yelling at Ray for going to the library. There is absolutely no way Ray could have known that Winston's staff was so incompetent as to let the most dangerous ghost escape from his idiotic zoo to follow them across town and take control of a giant stone lion threatening their lives. That's not Ray's fault. At all. And he says, "We're too old for this." Too old for a trip to the library? What are you talking about, you narcissistic, power-hungry moron? And guess what? Without this trip to the library, no one would know Nadim's part in this film, and no one would know Garaka's weakness to brass. The world would end. And he continues.
But you need to find a new way to do the things you love.
What? I say again, he went to the library. This arc is so stupid. The writers don't know what they want to do with Ray. They want him to be Bilbo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings, unsettled by his peaceful existence and desperate for excitement, but too old to actually seek it out. The problem is, they don't even have Ray seek out excitement. He went to the library. Research is now too much for them because Winston's organization is so terrible that... Never mind, that's a different video. Everyone returns to the firehouse, which has been seized by the government, but is not under police guard for... reasons. Ray approaches Nadim and tries to teach him to control his Firemaster powers, with an inspiring speech about all the people in history that could do it better. And the next day, when Garaka has been released and the world is ending, Ray joins Winston, Janine, and the other old Ghostbusters in suiting up to fight a god. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? And once Phoebe comes up from the basement to save the day from Garaka, Ray is the one to solve the problem of trapping him. And Winston and the others come to his aid to pull the switch.
Golden years!
Using the power of love. I guess he found a new way to do what he loves. By bringing Winston along this time? What was this? Ray deserved better. I mean, he wrote the original movies. How did he not object to being treated this way? Let's be clear. His arc was, I know you miss being a Ghostbuster, even though you're more involved with the organization than the active Ghostbusters, but you shouldn't go to the library because it's too dangerous. On the other hand, let's fight this god together because your narcissistic conservator, Winston, now deems it okay for you.
How did it come to this?
While we're at it, these aren't the only men who don't know their place. There's also Nadim, who begins the film as an aimless derelict selling his deceased grandmother's belongings. But I guess the theme behind him is that there's a hidden spark in all utter losers. His just happens to be literal, and it flares up mostly when he's feeling stressed. It happens after the orb creates a localized earthquake in Ray's shop, when he's being oddly and leadingly questioned by Peter Venkman, and when the possessor tries to kill Trevor with a proton pack. When he's not stressed, he struggles to do anything with the power, and when the fight is done, he has a mini breakdown. I'm not sure what Nadim is doing in this movie at all. There's no growth here, and he doesn't find his place. He barely gains an appreciation for his heritage as a Firemaster. Finally, we have Podcast, who lost his place as Phoebe's love interest, lost his place as the Ray to Phoebe's Egon in the new Ghostbusters, and lost his place in the story by them moving to New York City. However, he seems to be the only character that takes ghostbusting seriously. Podcast tricked his parents into letting him somehow go to New York City to live for the summer with a complete stranger by telling them that he was going to space camp. Space camp costs money. Space camp has permission forms, releases. Parents take their kids there to drop them off. How would that lie even work? Anyway, Podcast tags along to Winston's lab with Ray, tags along on an unsanctioned ghost hunt with Phoebe, and tags along with Phoebe and Ray to the library, where he tells a pretty decent, inappropriate joke.
John Curie's already dead.
He also tags along to the firehouse, where he helps teach Nadim to use his powers, and is the only one impressed when he can. He ultimately saves Trevor and Gary by breaking Lucky's proton pack. Good thing they had an extra one to give her, which they never even offered to Podcast. Then he is again attacked by Stay Puft Marshmallow Minis at a crucial juncture in the final battle, sidelining him. And that's his story. He starts and ends the movie with no defined role and doesn't develop over the course of the story. He's just another of the lost men of the Ghostbusters. And that's the end of the video. If you liked it, please consider clicking the little buttons below and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.